I am super excited to be talking to our guest. I come to you with a sensational story. I'm sure you guys all have heard about a guy who got 9 in writing. And guess what? This guy is coming on the show today.
Something inside me wasn't really satisfied with all that. And I mustered up some courage and I went for it, yeah. And I know how much courage it takes to face the fears. Like, I had some fears about quitting it.
In fact, I promised myself that I would, during COVID time, I promised myself that I would never skip work.
For 3 years, and then in 2020, I took my test, I got 8, but my writing was still 6.5. And the breakdown for task 1 before that was 4 on one of my exams. It was 4 for task achievement. Over the past 4 months, I started heavily focusing on ChatGPT samples. And yes, it played the key role in getting 9, getting the 9.
With me, my biggest shortcoming is probably my spelling.
Spelling?
Oh yeah, spelling.
And I mastered the skill to the point where I would guess the right answers without having the set of questions.
This entire time I'm sitting here and my mind is can't compute that, can't really process that. This guy sounds practically like a native and he got 7.5. That's downright unfair.
That gives me an idea to maybe after your bout with Alicia to have it with me, maybe.
Oh, sure,
because I'm probably more suited to your weight class. Cause like I'm lightwaight. So is it like I don't know.
I can move up classes, no problem. Like, I'm just
or I can cut. Yeah, that's the problem.
Sure. I badly wanted you to come on the podcast before you went on and everyone else's podcast. Hey folks, hey everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Astra Muse. Today, I am super excited to be talking to our guest. I come to you with a sensational story. I'm sure you guys all have heard about a guy who got 9 in writing. And guess what? This guy is coming on the show today. All right, without further ado, meet Mr. Laziz Atabaev. Mr. Laziz Atabaev, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Honali.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Let's get into it.
Yeah, let's dive in. So, the first thing that I'm really curious to know is how you felt in that moment when you received your results.
Feelings, I can't even describe them. I guess I was speechless. That was the first thing that I felt. I was actually about to leave my house. I had lessons starting at 2:00. And I got the message like at 20 minutes before that, and I was about to leave my house. And I guess my first reaction was scream. Yeah, I screamed out of as hard as I could. Yeah, that was the biggest scream. Yeah.
Oh, you did. And, you literally did.
Yeah, I did. Literally. That was a bit. I got a bit emotional at that moment, and my wife was there, and she got frightened.
That's what I really thought.
But she's smart, and she's smart enough to to understand that that was the actually a good reaction, a reaction about the result. And she knew immediately, she sensed that was a 9. She didn't know that it wasn't a 9 overall though, but something good was there, yeah.
Yeah.
Mixed feelings, yeah.
Mixed feelings, right? I would have freaked out if I heard someone, scream in my house, because I think that someone broke into our house or something terribly went wrong.
It was close to that, yeah.
Yeah. All right. And would you like to tell our audience a little about yourself, like what you do at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I haven't been active on social media before, not on Telegram, although I did have the channel, but it had like literally 80 subscribers, and all of them were my offline students, and I wasn't really working on that channel up until this point, and now there's like a few thousands, and so I do teaching, as you can probably tell. I don't do writing as a hobby. No, God no. So I teach at a language center back in my hometown, Navoi. So I'm 25 almost, and I've been doing this for over 6 years now. Yeah, I've been in teaching industry for 6 years now. And I'm enjoying it. I have a few groups, like about 8 groups to be precise, and got just a little over 100 students.
Wow,
offline. And
that's impressive.
Mostly work offline, yeah. Anything to add here?
I got a lot of questions I want to ask you today. Right. So yeah, before we do that, can we adjust the mic? Because my editor tells me that your mic might not be picking up your voice right now. Is it better now? Okay, you guys like it? Okay, all right. Yeah. So teaching, right? Yes. Can you give us some backstory about how you got into teaching? Has it always been the plan?
Not really. Never. No. It wasn't definitely my plan. I was actually planning to get into finance and banking, because I'm a math guy, or used to be. My father has a background in as an economist, and I've always wanted to become a financial analyst or something like that, just like in some movies like about brokers, stockbrokers, something like that. I had big dreams. And I actually did study at a university, and I was majoring in finance at some point.
Just for the record, where did you go to university?
It was in Almaty. It was a business school in Almaty. Yeah.
Kazakhstan.
Kazakhstan, yes. Yeah. Exactly. So I was studying there. I did study there for 1 year, and then for half a year offline, and then the COVID. We had COVID lockdown. So I was stuck there for another half a year, and I studied online, and from that moment on. And then I did study for 1 more year online, but back in Navoi. But then I just got fed up with all that. I don't want to say bullshit, but I wasn't really seeing myself in finance anymore, and all those dreams and big ambitions, they just crumbled down and fell apart. Something just clicked in my mind, and I felt that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do, what I was destined to do. Is that something that would make sense? Yeah. So and then after a long thought, I thought about it. I thought through the whole idea of quitting college, and ended up doing it.
So you dropped out?
Yes, I
did. You did?
I'm a dropout, yeah. Not a Harvard dropout, but still, yeah.
All right. Please tell me you did not make that decision because of all those, big CEOs, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, or Bill Gates.
No, definitely not. I did that.
Whose story is similar to yours.
Yeah. I actually wouldn't recommend quitting college, by the way. I still don't, but I don't regret that decision. That was I guess the best decision I've ever made. That was the toughest and at the same time, the best decision I've made in my life. Because I knew I wasn't doing the right thing. I had a gut feeling, so to say, and something inside me wasn't really satisfied with all that, and I mustered up some courage and I went for it. Yeah, and I know how much courage it takes to face the fears. Like, I had some fears about quitting it. I was heavily invested, both like financially and probably mentally, and energy and time, of course. And quitting was really hard. It was a hard decision, not gonna lie. But I'm really glad that my parents actually supported my idea, or should I say, they weren't against the idea, weren't really that supportive per se, but they weren't against. And that is something that I'm really grateful to have had, because not many parents here in Uzbekistan would be able to truly understand the decision behind that, the logic behind that decision, so to say.
Yeah, most people here, most students, if they go to their parents and tell them, I'm dropping out of university, but next
would
thing,
be a big deal.
Next thing you know, you're gonna get kicked out of the house.
Yes, but I wasn't. Yeah. So, what else? What was that?
So, what did you specifically study at university? You said you studied finance. Was it
I
like
was majoring in finance,
accounting,
and, banking, and then my minor was accounting. Yeah. So they had this major thing and minor thing, just like in big universities.
Right.
My major was finance and banking. It was literally called finance and banking. And my minor was accounting and bookkeeping.
So did you lose interest in accounting and finance because you weren't good with numbers, or because of other, factors like the university setup or some other external, external factors?
Straight. So as I said before, I was a math guy. So I was really good at math, or I like to think that way. And I was, I think, not to brag, not to sound braggish, but I was quite good at finance and banking, all that stuff, and math too. And I actually quite learned a lot of stuff from accounting lessons. And the studies were good. Yeah, they were. My marks were great, and I was top of the class and all that. But I guess I decided to quit because I wasn't satisfied with the university itself, university system, and the team, so to say. So the people. And I think now, looking back on that decision, if I were at a different college, maybe more friendly one, I wouldn't have to make that decision. Yeah.
So the environment you were in wasn't stimulating enough.
Yes, it was. I felt that the environment was hostile. Even.
Like, in what sense?
In the sense that my ambitions weren't understood. I've always been a big thinker. Like, I used to dream big, but the place where I was studying at that moment, I'm not gonna name names here, but they weren't seeing that the same thing I could see, so they weren't able to imagine the things that I could. So I knew that I wasn't at the place where I was supposed to be.
Yeah, and just for clarity, we're talking about local university here, right? Not the university in Almaty. So you returned home after COVID.
No, that was the same university. Yeah.
Same. Still, you're talking about Almaty.
Yes, I'm still talking about Almaty University. It was a business school, and I didn't study anywhere else besides that.
Oh, I thought you said you returned home after COVID.
So I didn't make it clear. So I studied half a year there offline, but then we switched to Zoom lessons, still that university, but now lockdown, under lockdown. And then I had to come back to my hometown and still study there, but still in the Zoom lessons.
I see. Right. It's a tough choice, tough decision to make for a lot of students.
By the way, I was going through some mild depression stage, so to say. I wasn't clinically diagnosed, but I felt like it was something close to depression.
Here's the deal. I guess we all felt that way during lockdowns, right?
Oh, really?
We all felt that way because being trapped inside your house and you're not getting enough exercise, you're not, talking to people, you're not getting that important social input, right? You start, it kind of puts you in a moment, in a position to, in a spot to reflect on your life. And it's very dark to look inside your mind, right? Because it brings back all the, the trauma, the past events that happened, and not many people can get past that period. Can get past that stage. So I personally, I personally felt that way during COVID lockdowns. In fact, I promised myself that I would, during COVID time, I promised myself that I would never skip work. Yeah, it made me appreciate work so much because I missed work during COVID.
So were you working offline or online?
I didn't have a job. I was out of work for 3-4 months straight, I think. Yeah. I was stuck home watching videos on YouTube and just goofing off on the internet. Yeah, not up to something.
Oh, I feel like
in particular.
Your case was even tougher because at least I had a job and I was getting paid at that time.
Oh, cool. Yeah. And now, what do you say we talk about the biggest elephant in the room, which is your band 9 and writing? Sure. So can you walk us through your prep process? Like, how'd you go from 0 to band 9?
From 0 to band 9.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I've got all prepared. I did actually prepare for the interview. Yeah. So my first ever IELTS exam was back in 2017 with a few of my close friends, with one of whom I'm still working. So we're co-workers. Yeah. And, but before that, I did study for about like 2 years. So the whole preparation before my first exam took me about 2 years. I started in 2015, right after I finished high school. At that time, we had 9 years. So we didn't have 11 years as it is now. So, and then I went on to study at a LISM, at a local LISM, and I started English classes. I started not because I felt like I had to, but because my friends were enrolled in one of the classes. By the way, the classes were conducted by Mr. Astra. You might have heard him. He's quite popular, not only in Navoi, but also in Tashkent. And so, back to my story. I started lessons just because my friends were there. So that was a very common reason, I guess, even today. So a lot of guys, I can see a lot of guys joining my classes just because their friends are there. And it's more of their reason is not to study per se, but to socialize. And then they gradually start getting deeper and deeper into the whole IELTS thing. And then they actually do become interested in this and end up getting high scores. Yeah. So that's the thing that happened to me. I did study for 2 years, took my first exam, got 7. I barely got 7 because I was almost, the score was almost 6.5. So it was the lowest possible 7. It was 6 for speaking, 6.5 for writing, and 7 for reading, and 7.5 for listening. I was actually expecting 7. By the way, funny story. Back then, we didn't have CDIs, so we could only take paper-based tests. And the results normally come out in like 13 days, right? But before that, in the meantime, while I was waiting for the results, I decided to occupy myself with something, preferably a job. And I started seeking some vacancies at language centers. And I bumped into one language center. It was a very small language center with just a few hundred students. And I applied there. I applied for the teaching position, and they were a bit hesitant because of my age. I was almost 18. Yeah, I just turned 18, if I'm not mistaken. And they were a bit reluctant about my age because I looked way too young for my age, even at that time. But I convinced them with a very, what do you say? What do you call this? Convincing reason.
Compelling reason.
Yeah.
A compelling
reason.
reason.
Compelling reason. Okay.
And what was that?
And the reason was that I started boasting about my score, IELTS score. I said, I have 7. Come on, you kidding me? At that time, 7 was a big deal.
Yeah.
So back in 2017, 7 was a big deal. Like no one had 8.5s and 9s. So 7 was a big deal, and they were immediately impressed. And that was the turning point for me. So they did end up having me as a teacher. But the thing is, it was before the results came out. So I didn't actually know I got 7. And I still kind of lied on my interview.
This guy lied in his interview. He had the balls to lie in his interview.
And
guys, don't try this.
I wouldn't recommend unless you are desperate.
Yeah.
And I guess I was desperate for some pocket money at the time.
Yeah.
And that was my first job, actually. First job ever. And I started teaching. I remember my first lesson. It was alphabet. It was alphabet. I was teaching alphabet. I was showing the sounds, how to pronounce certain letters and stuff like that. It was funny, but not fun, but it was funny. Yeah. And then I didn't take the exam up until 2020 because I was studying at university and I was working. By the way, when I went to Almaty, I was doing some part-time job as a teacher there. So they've got this university called NIS, Nazarbayev Intellectual School or something. So it's not a university, it's a school.
It's like our presidential school, I guess.
It's like a presidential school,
It's like a presidential school.
So it's a prestigious, very competitive school that only accepts like 1 out of 100, if I'm not mistaken, students each year. So that was very competitive.
Wow, with acceptance rate of 1%.
Yes, and it was a big deal. And I got a position as a instructor. They call them trainers. They were called trainers. We're referred to as trainers. And my job was to prepare the students for their exams at NIS or NIS. So the exams consisted of reading passages and a few grammar exercises. That's it, yeah. So I worked there for a year before I quit my college and quit the job and started working at where I currently working, Big Ben Learning Center.
So it's called Big Bang.
It's called Big Ben.
Big Ben.
Not the bang, but
Big Ben. Isn't that the name of a cartoon? Big Ben.
Big Bang is the name of a TV series.
It's a Big Bang. Bang. I heard Big Ben.
Okay, let's make it clear. The school is called Big Ben. It's like a clock tower.
Oh, yeah.
Like a clock tower, yeah. Big Ben.
Got it.
Big Ben, yeah.
Yeah. So, that's an interesting name. Right. Can we talk more about your writing prep? Like, is it something, how do you go about improving your writing? How did you go about improving your writing skills? Is it something you did in the class alongside your students, or did you use some, outside learning tools?
Yeah, sure. I've got a long story.
Yeah.
So my first steps into writing were with the book called, it's a legendary book called IELTS Advantage Writing Skills. I'm pretty sure everybody at this point knows about this book. It's a legendary book, and it was the best book for at that time in order to get from nothing to at least like 5.5 or 6. And this book, maybe not alone, but coupled with some samples. By the way, at that time, IELTS Simon was quite a big thing. It was a big star. And I copied his style of writing, and I studied these two materials, these two sources. They were my main source of progress. And yeah, I still had some offline classes with my teacher, yeah. And that was my first steps that got me 6.5. Although honestly, I was expecting a better score back then. I was expecting 7. Maybe because I was overestimating my skills at the time. A lot of candidates seem to. They don't really understand the scoring, the procedure, the band descriptors, and sometimes they tend to overestimate or underestimate their potential, their performance. And then after that, I didn't prepare for my exams for 3 years. And then in 2020, I took my test. I got 8, but my writing was still 6.5. I didn't really do much preparation in terms of writing. I only focused on speaking. By the way, at that time, my speaking was 8.5. Yes, on my second attempt, the speaking was 8.5. I was totally...
That's so hard to believe. What went wrong
Shocked.
with your your recent attempt? You got 7.5 speaking.
Yes.
Are you gonna actually apply for ROI?
I did.
You did.
I
You did.
voted,
Please.
yeah.
Yes.
And I'm on the can you say on the edge? And I'm waiting for the results.
So results pending.
Eagerly,
right?
yeah. The results are pending still. And yeah, I didn't do any prep in terms of writing up until my next attempt, which was in 2021, and I got 7.5 for writing. And the biggest source of progress back then was Pauline Cullen, or to be precise, her book, famous book called The Key to IELTS Task 2, if I'm not mistaken. That was the game changer for me back then, because I just started understanding what task response is and what coherence meant, and all sorts of other nuances regarding band descriptors. So yeah, that was a big game changer, and I would recommend everyone who is stuck at like 6.5 or even 7 to try that book. Yeah. And then I did get 8, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, that was 8. Is it a 4th attempt? Yeah, 4th. So that was 8, and the distance or the time difference between those 2 attempts was 1 year, and the preparation was mainly I emphasized on task 1, and the source of progress was again Pauline Cullen, but this time it was The Key to IELTS Task 1. And that was her famous book, and it was again a game changer. I learned a lot of stuff from that book.
Can you share some of the stuff you learned from that book in particular in terms of task 2?
Task 2.
Task 1. I meant to say task 1. So what are some things you didn't know but you found out once you were introduced to that textbook?
All right, let me think. So I guess one of the biggest real game changers was comparing figures. Now looking back at my previous works, the style in which I wrote task one reports, I don't think I showed enough comparison, which was one of the biggest requisites for getting a good task achievement.
Right.
And I actually got the breakdown, and the breakdown for task one before that was 4 on one of my exams. It was 4 for task achievement. And I think that was the biggest change. And I also focused a lot on overviews. I guess I wasn't really showing any major points, any major features when it comes to overviews. And there was two problems I had at that time, and I fixed those.
And would you attribute some of your success in writing to your math background? Because you're good with numbers, so you're good at spotting numbers that are similar.
Let me rephrase this. I wouldn't attribute to math per se, but to general intelligence and general knowledge about the world itself. And I think you would measure it with IQ on an IQ scale. And I would attribute my success in terms of task one to that more than purely mathematical skills. But I don't know, it could be math background.
Yeah, because with task one, you have to be able to select the right features, right? And sometimes students don't see that, not difference in numbers, even if they're right under their nose. You got 30 and you got 60, and it's twice as big, but they miss it, right?
Oh yeah, that's definitely
that's what I meant.
That definitely has a lot to do with your math background. I mean, I think everybody at this point should be able to recognize those patterns. I mean, they're quite easy, and they wouldn't require deep understanding of math.
Right. But you got to be a little quick-minded, though, right? When you see those numbers,
yeah, sure.
you got 20 minutes,
absolutely.
and you have to see and select and start talking about them right from the get-go. Now, how much would you say ChatGPT helped with your writing skills? Was ChatGPT involved in any of that?
It was. It was really involved. I think involved isn't even the right word here because I was wholly dependent and reliant on ChatGPT as my last preparation. I've only started using ChatGPT over the past 4 or 3 months. I wasn't really actively using ChatGPT in terms of writing because I was kind of underestimating its power because I had rumors that it wasn't really good at assessing your essays. It doesn't understand the rubrics. It doesn't understand your prompt sometimes. It doesn't understand what you want. And so I wasn't really paying much attention to the whole AI thing. And I was just focusing on my writing and reading samples. And over the past 4 months, I started heavily focusing on ChatGPT samples. And yes, it played the key role in getting getting the 9.
So you use ChatGPT only for samples, but never to check your own work?
No, it really can't check your work that properly.
How about pointing out, say, flaws in your grammar or word choice?
So yes, when it comes to grammar, I was wondering if my grammar was good enough for 9 because in my breakdowns I never got 9s before. I only had 8s. So 8 for lexical resource and grammatical range and accuracy wasn't a problem at all because I kept getting 8s. So I started wondering if there were any flaws, inaccuracies in my grammar or vocabulary that I was missing that kept me away from getting 9 in those sections. And I started using ChatGPT at first for those areas. but not successfully, because it kept saying that it was either great, it was perfect, although I knew sometimes I made intentional mistakes with articles like and it kept saying it's okay, it's fine, or and then I started pointing out to those mistakes, like, but no, look, there is this mistake with the article there, come on. And he would answer, oh yes, like silly me, I didn't notice it, thanks for pointing out that mistake of mine, sorry, next time I will be more careful, something like that. And I understand that, I understood that there wasn't much point after 8 and above to use ChatGPT for those purposes. At least ChatGPT 3.5. I never used the latest version.
But I personally use ChatGPT a lot to check my work. Because I want to beg to differ here. Like I'm playing the devil's advocate, and as much as I understand ChatGPT is not quite complete and accurate, because still it's a work in progress, you can still learn quite a lot. Like, so as a student who's stuck on 6.5 level, you could say drop your essay and tell it to point out the mistakes and comment on word choice, or revise grammar, right? These are a few things you can do with ChatGPT.
Yes, absolutely,
right?
You can. Yeah, like I was probably expecting a little more than just that, so maybe my standards were quite high for ChatGPT at that time. Yeah.
Right.
But it keeps improving, yeah, definitely. So there's big future behind that.
My feeling is, like, soon you're really not going to need a teacher to look at your work. There are actually AI-powered apps, essay check apps you can use, but they're paid. Right? I've seen them, circulating on the internet. You can get quite accurate assessment on your work, along with feedback.
I guess the only thing, sorry to interrupt, yeah. I guess the only thing to consider here, the only difference in this regard would be the fact that teacher would demand you to write and would demand you to submit your essays. That's the only difference that would make a big difference for a lot of students, actually. Yeah, so if you don't constantly ask them to submit their work, and sometimes tell them off for not doing what they're supposed to do, they wouldn't do anything. Yeah,
I can absolutely confirm that from personal experience.
But in terms of purely assessing your work, sure, you wouldn't need a teacher anymore.
Yeah, because here at this school, with high-level students, 70% of the time their work is getting checked by ChatGPT. There's still a teacher in charge telling them to hand in their work in a timely manner, right? So for the most part, their work gets checked by ChatGPT, and there's this 30% of the time their work gets checked by the teacher in the class. Because we figured this way we're being more efficient, right? It can be quite repetitive having to point out
Let me ask you
grammar mistakes.
One thing. So how do the students here submit their essays if they are written on paper? Like, how do you manage?
No, we actually have everyone type their work.
Oh, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Well, then it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah. We only get them to write their work in the class, and only if their exam's around the corner, if they got exam coming up, right? So say there's a few weeks left to go, we get them to practice on paper. Although we understand it's not quite the smart thing to do, because if you're a student who's going to be sitting the paper-based IELTS, you're better off writing on paper the entire time. It's just with paper things, everything just gets mixed up, and right. And we're trying to save the environment. No, not exactly. We're just too lazy, I guess, to have students write their work on paper and check them. Yeah. Trying to, be efficient, but sometimes it means having to, cut corners, even though we think it's not right. Yeah, because we feel like with ChatGPT, it's better than human checkers, I think, in a lot of ways, right? As a teacher myself, sometimes checking students' work, I try being attentive best I can, but I anyway miss some mistakes.
Sure.
Yeah, I do. But with ChatGPT, it almost never happens, right? Yeah. I also believe in the saying that if you can't beat something, join it.
Yeah, okay.
And that's what we've done here. Yeah.
That's great philosophy.
Yeah.
It's a great philosophy, yeah.
Right. And can you elaborate more on your recent exam experience, specifically the writing section?
Yes, sure.
Because I'm guessing 99% of the viewers here are here
for the writing,
for the writing section.
Yeah, let's. Who are we? Kidding, right? So I'm here for my 9 for writing, and let's be it. I guess the latest exam. So I took it on May 5th. It was CDI. Like I'm never intending to take paper-based ever again because at this point, like, there's even no logic behind taking paper-based. Who would do that? Like, unless they are not capable of typing fast. And so I took the CDI. I got, by the way, I got familiar questions on task 1 and task 2, both. And that was a game changer.
So you got
for task 1,
repeat tasks.
Yes, not repeated, but familiar. Okay, let me make it clear. It's because that's a very important point here. So for task 1, I got the table that either you or Alicia shared on your channel. It was about marriages in Australia, religious and civil marriages, and the average age of bride and groom. That was the one, word for word, number for number. It was exactly, I memorized the numbers. And then I didn't really prepare for that table, but it was quite easy. Yeah, let's be honest here. It was the easiest one that I ever got for task 1. And for task 2 was the question about saying whether CEOs and presidents of the company should be paid more than ordinary workers. And is it like fair or not? Do you agree or disagree? To what extent do you agree or disagree? And the moment I saw that question, the topic, I had a little smirk on my face because about 2 or 3 days before the exam, I actually looked through that question and analyzed it with my students, with my offline students, and that was a part of the preparation. And that was a game changer. Like, I guess you have had an experience of getting familiar questions or repeated questions.
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah, it happened with me a few times.
So I guess we're on the same page when it comes to saying that it makes it gives you an advantage. To put it simply, it gives you a huge advantage because you already know what you're going to say. Maybe not in terms of like grammar and lexical resource, but definitely in terms of task response. So that's a huge benefit to task response. And I knew exactly what I was going to write. Normally, I spend about 5 or 6 minutes on planning stage at the beginning. That time, it only took me 2 minutes. I just typed out all the ideas I had. And so, should I elaborate on the way I wrote the...
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so when it comes to task 2, I wrote standard five paragraphs. It was introduction, nothing special, just paraphrase the question or the description of the topic and answer the question. Nothing special there. I guess the only difference that I made this time, only this time, compared to other times, was that I did mention the ideas or the arguments in the introduction.
So you mean like in your thesis statement?
Yes. I just started listing arguments like X, Y, Z. Because like as CEOs have this and this and this. And then these were my main arguments. And then I had three main body paragraphs, each one focusing on a separate idea. So the first main argument was that CEOs actually take big risks and face the consequences of their choices, of the decisions that they make. So they they deserve getting paid higher than other ordinary workers. That was my first idea. In my second main body paragraph, I focused on the fact that there should be a structured hierarchy in any like system or company in order for them to function well. That was like a requisite for prosperity of the company. So there must be some sort of hierarchy, and that hierarchy can be reflected in the salary gap. I think that was a very good paragraph. That was the best paragraph I've ever written.
I love your word choices too.
Yeah. And my last main body paragraph was, I guess, also slightly different from my previous approaches. So I did mention the opposite side, although I wasn't required to. I did mention that some may claim that ordinary personnel do the main work. Like the lion's share of work is done by other workers. And I kind of did recognize that point, but then started refuting it. So I learned the strategy from Tahasoni. And I know that Jurabek Sanakov also uses that strategy. So I decided to give it a go. Yeah. And then I refuted it saying that CEOs back in the day have had that experience. They have gone through the same process, same journey that these ordinary workers are going through. And so they are now the top position. They've gone through all that procedure, and now they deserve a higher pay, something like that. And so they've got the expertise and skills. And and then I wrapped it up with some nice conclusion with like 2 sentences. It was, again, nothing special in the conclusion.
Right. And when you were done writing, did you have time for proofreading your work?
So yes,
were you left
I finished
with extra time?
both tasks in 50 minutes. Like I finished task 2 in 35. I always start with task 2, by the way. I guess that's self-explanatory. So I finished task 2 in 35 minutes. I didn't proofread it right away because I wasn't sure how much time it would take me to finish task 1. So I immediately went on to do the task 1. I finished that one in 15 minutes because it was easy again. It normally takes me about 20 minutes or 22 minutes sometimes if it's a bit harder. And I did manage it within 15 minutes, and I had like 10 minutes left for editing and proofreading. So I started heavily editing and polishing here and there, improving some of the word choices, punctuation mistakes, subject-verb agreement. I may get some a little inattentive. And when it comes to subject and verb agreement, I fixed some R and is to be mistakes. And I had like about 1 minute at the end when I just stopped and I looked at the work and thought, this is either my ticket to getting overall 9, not like 9 in writing, I wasn't expecting 9 in writing, ticket to 9, because it has to be, I thought it has to be 8.5, or I'm never taking the test again. Because I knew I did my best. I've never written anything that great. I don't want to sound arrogant, but it was a
You feel it. You feel it.
Yeah, you
I
feel-
can
you do,
confirm
you do.
that. Okay.
You
Every
do.
time I got 9, I felt I was gonna get a 9. I knew I was
you
gonna get
do.
a 9. So you kind of know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I sensed that it was my best work, and so this is all or nothing. Yeah.
Right. So
Should I elaborate on task 1 too?
yes, that'd be great.
By the way, when
That
it
would be
comes to task 1, I think that shouldn't be news to anyone, but I think task 1 is often overlooked, especially by high performers, like those who are stuck at 8 or maybe even 8.5. I'm not really sure about their breakdown, but I feel like they are not doing enough in task 1 rather than task 2, because I've seen some of the guys get straight 9s in task 2 but perform poorly in task 1. And I think when it comes to task 1, although it was easy, I still wrote the best piece of report I could. And I did a great job in particular with the overview. I deliberately wrote 3 sentences overview, although I normally do 2. For what it's worth, it depends on the report itself. Like sometimes you just can't make it 3 because there is not enough information on the table, on the graph. But yes, at that time I did it 3. So I said that in my first sentence, I said that the religious marriages had extreme fluctuations, while civil marriages had steady yet significant, something like that. I'm not sure about the word choice precisely. Growth. And then in my second sentence, I said that there was a what did I say? I think it was the fact that the other one overtook. I think it was civil marriages that it actually overtook by the end of the period. And then in my last one, I decided to add the additional sentence. It was about the age gap. I wrote that the fact that the average age rose, but the gap didn't change much. Yeah, that was my overview. Not word for word, but something close to that. Yeah. And then standard two main body paragraphs I divided into marriages, 2 marriages in one side, and the ages in the other one. Yeah. But I don't think I did anything special when it comes to main body paragraphs.
And you also had time to proofread your task 1 report, right?
Yeah, about 2 or 3 minutes.
And I kind of feel like that's what's missing with my writing. Like every time I'm sitting the test, I'm out of time. I don't have enough time to proofread my work.
What's the average time?
So I spend about 40, sometimes 40 minutes, sometimes more on task 2, and about 18, 19 minutes on task 1. Right. With me, my biggest shortcoming is probably my spelling.
Spelling?
Oh yeah, spelling.
Is it spelling in terms of typing?
Mm-hmm. Spelling
problems?
mistakes. Yeah, spelling mistakes. Like
or is it like you just
misspell
forget the words, how they're spelled, or what is it?
Yeah,
both.
Yes. No, it's not my typing speed. I type pretty fast. It's just the spelling of the word. Like when I read, it looks fine to me.
Oh,
but
you just miss stuff.
Misspell. Yeah, I just misspell words. That's my biggest drawback in writing, I guess. Right. But
yeah, it does affect your score.
Yeah. It's a real drag. It's a real drag. All these like little things, subject verb agreement, and your word spelling, right, and some punctuation. If you're really aiming for that top score, then you have to get everything right.
Everything has to be perfect.
Yeah, right. And would you like to share some tips for other modules of IELTS as well, like how you go,
other modules,
yeah,
okay.
how you go about reading, how you go about listening, and what you do to practice and improve your speaking skills?
I have to be honest, I don't consistently get nines in both sections. I think that's not news to no one. But I did get quite a lot of nines for most of my attempts. And for listening, I think the biggest advice, I'm not sure if anyone has ever mentioned that, but for listening, I would highly recommend listening to the audio tracks, audio recordings, especially for part 4 and 3, without doing the test itself. Like no papers, no tests, no questions, only the recording. So by doing this, you would have the chance to really focus on the whole speech and whole the dialogue or monologue itself without being distracted by questions. So you would just enjoy the recording or especially part 4, because they're quite interesting.
Yeah, they are. They are usually lecture on some extinct birds or islands.
So I mastered that skill back when I was at the Lyceum. I would commute to the Lyceum. I would walk to the Lyceum for about 15 minutes. And my daily habit was that I would listen to part 4. And I mastered the skill to the point where I would guess the right answers without having the set of questions. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Let me rephrase this.
Yeah, I get what you mean.
I mean, let me rephrase this for some of the candidates who may not have the highest listening comprehension. So I listen to the recording without knowing what the questions are, what the gaps are, and what I need to put in the gaps. And I guess not all, but some of the answers, like it's usually 5 to 8 out of 10, only by listening to the way the speaker talks. And it's normally it has a lot to do with the word stress. Yes. And I successfully guess at least half the answers.
Yeah. That's so. Your suggestion is to boost listening skills. You should be listening more to tracks without the questions. Yeah,
that would be a very specific advice for the range for the level at probably like starting from 5.5. Like if you're very low on the IELTS scale, that wouldn't be very helpful. Like you wouldn't understand anything for that matter. Yeah.
And plus, I know why this technique works. It's something we also recommend that students here do. So with listening, the reason why it's so confusing and sometimes frustrating for students is because there is a lot of multitasking. Yeah, they got to do a lot of multitasking. You have to read, understand, and listen, understand at the same time. But if you just listen and pay attention and not have to read, then you have undivided attention on just one thing, right? And that's why that's why it works so well.
By the way, I have another piece of advice. Can I?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, please.
So I don't want it to be only about writing. I mean, come on. But yeah, so when it comes, now that you mention it, I started. It came to my mind the fact that I advise students not to make this mistake. And the mistake is they start writing or looking at the question set right after the speakers mention something important, which may not be the answer itself, the keyword itself, but the trick they've prepared so that you fail. This is especially reflected in matching questions. So you get the options from the box, And they've got a few tricks in between, and I watch closely the way students hold their pencils and work with the questions. And I realized that some of my students, and the majority of my students, make this mistake. They start to taking the option, or simply looking at the options back and forth from A to H or whatever, right after the speakers mention certain keywords, which is not a good thing to do, because sometimes the keyword ends up being the correct answer and they just take the right answer. But the other times, like 30%, 40% of the time, this is going to be a trick. And once they detract their attention from the audio and turn on their visual, what is it? Visual perception, or they lose the link or the connection with the audio. They do hear the stuff they're saying, but they don't really understand and listen to what they're saying. And they lose the answer, right, which comes right after that trick.
So there's really no point taking notes. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, to put it shortly and simply, don't immediately go after the options. Just wait a little, 2-3 seconds. They usually say something like "but," "although," which just refutes the option that was before.
Yeah, it invalidates whatever they said before.
Yes.
Right. I get that.
That's the point they often miss.
Yeah, I actually, I've personally seen students do that in our mock tests. Like, they start taking notes when they have matching questions, but I don't really get it. It's so beyond me why they do that, because you can be taking notes, reading and listening at the same time.
It's impossible.
That's a lot of work. That's a lot of work for your mind.
Yeah.
So what I recommend really students to do which is similar to what you said. So at the end of the previous section, like say you were doing section 2, at the end of section 1, you get roughly 40 seconds to look at your answers, and you get about a minute at the beginning of section 2. So that adds up to 2 minutes. You should be reading that section and trying to memorize as much of the information as you can. So when the track starts playing, you're only listening.
Yeah,
right?
that's the whole point of the section 3 in particular.
Yeah.
And some of the other multiple choice questions. You have to memorize the keywords given in that. I see some of my students seem a little distracted when they're given the time to prepare, to look through the questions, and they are a little distracted. They're not interested in the questions, as if they would ace the next 10 questions. And I understand deep down that, like, okay, you're not paying attention, you're not giving it 100%. You're not going to get a 9 or any good score for that matter. And they usually end up getting 3 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, which is often just a guess. Guess,
Too laid back about it. They're too chill, which is not the right thing to do, right? How about speaking? What are some suggestions?
Okay, when it comes to speaking, funny story about speaking. So I did mention getting 8.5 back in 2020, and I also got another 8.5 right before my last attempt. It was April, was it 12th or 11th? So it was CDI with IDP. I got 8 for writing, and I got 8.5 for speaking. And it wasn't a shocking result for me. I did get 8 for writing before, and I did get 8.5 for speaking before. But the shock was the fact that I got 7.5 not in my last attempt, which is again not a shock, honestly. And the reason why it wasn't shocking is that I did get 7.5s before. In between two 8.5s, I got two 7.5s for speaking. And that's the craziest part. At the beginning, when I first got 7.5 right after 8.5, that one was quite shocking. And I even appealed that one. But the EOR wasn't successful. And I started thinking that, okay, probably 8.5. My first 8.5 was some sort of mistake, or I don't know. And then I retook the exam and got 7.5 again. But I didn't do the EOR because I wasn't really seeing the point. And then I got, again, 7.5. So that was three 7.5s between two 8.5s for speaking. And then 8.5. And the biggest shock is that I didn't really see that much difference in the performance of all 5 attempts. Maybe there was some inaccuracies, like some mispronounced words in those 7.5s, but generally speaking, not really. I mean, you can probably already tell.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm wondering. That's what I'm thinking. How
like,
is that even
I'm not
possible?
saying that my speaking is perfect. I wasn't expecting 9, but not 7.5. I mean, come on.
That's what I was thinking. This entire time I'm sitting here and my mind is can't compute that, can't really process that. This guy sounds practically like a native and he got 7.5. That's downright unfair.
What examiners do sometimes. They just happen to underestimate or overestimate your score sometimes. Yeah,
right.
This happens.
Right.
So when it comes to tips, should I give tips?
Oh, that would be great, please.
All right, tips. I guess the biggest tip would be understanding the band descriptors. This applies to both speaking and writing. Understanding the logic behind each requisite, each requirement within each criterion in the band descriptors is the key. Like if you don't understand why you're getting 6 for pronunciation, by the way, a lot of candidates actually, statistically speaking, get 6 for pronunciation. I think that I'm right here when it comes to the statistics. And the main reason they're not getting 7 for their pronunciation is because for pronunciation 7, that's just one example, you have to have a little something good from 8. It literally says that you have to meet positive criteria, some of the positive criteria from band 8 for pronunciation, and all positive criteria from band 6. And a lot of candidates seem to miss that thing, that requirement, and they end up getting 6. Some of my students got their breakdowns and they had 6 with 3 7s and 1 6 for pronunciation. And that happens, as far as I can tell, because they are missing those positive points from 8.
Can you be more specific and tell our audience what those points are?
So I don't memorize the band descriptors, but to the best of my memory, so there are basically 4 major requirements, one of which is intonation and stress, word stress. So there are certain parts of the speech that you don't really have to
emphasize, right?
Enunciate. Is that the word? Like to be. You don't really focus on to be within the sentence. It's usually either completely unpronounced, or as if there is no to be, or just slightly. You hardly notice it, and that's what native speakers tend to do. And there's also chunking, when you join a few sounds and words together as if they were one word. Like, for example, used to. Again, a lot of people don't seem to understand that you can't pause between used and to. You have to say used to. And if you look at the Cambridge definition of the word used to, it literally says used to, or the same thing with have to. You can't really say have to. Well, I have to go. Goodbye. No, you've got to say I have to. I have to go. I have to go. And for that for that aspect of your pronunciation, I would strongly recommend watching videos by Francis, was his name? I don't remember the last name, but Francis. And so he is the former examiner, speaking examiner, and he's a native, he's a British. And he particularly focuses on those aspects.
And that's not Francis Ngannou, guys, okay? That's UFC fighter. He's talking about he's talking about a different
Definitely
guy.
Not Francis Ngannou. Yeah.
Definitely not.
He wouldn't be really that great with pronunciation.
It's a different Francis.
Yeah.
Because that's the first person that comes up on YouTube when you look up Francis Ngannou.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you can just type IELTS speaking band 9 topic, let's say uniform. And his videos have to be somewhere in top 5, definitely. Yeah, and he's a lot of fun. He's quite charismatic. I wonder why he wouldn't get a lot of subscribers. His channel is quite not that popular.
I'm sure after this podcast, that channel is gonna blow up.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's the next section we're going to talk about?
So I guess we can finally wrap up the IELTS part and talk a little about your, teaching experience. You kind of already mentioned the things you do in the class. You talked about what are some do's and don'ts you have about teaching. So what's your general philosophy about teaching?
Okay. So when it comes to teaching, my biggest advice to teachers and biggest do's would be to understand not only and see things not only from your own perspective, but from the perspective of the students. So, for example, when I teach some of the grammar rules, I stop, I pause right in the middle of my sentence and thought, and think to myself, okay, they're not getting what I'm saying. For example, when I was explaining past perfect to some of my intermediate students, okay, look, Laziz, they're not getting it. Stop right there, leave it for later, explain past simple or other things, and leave it for later. Don't do it now. Maybe once they're ready, sometime later, you will do that, but not now. Because I can see, I can sense, maybe that's something inherent within my personality trait, or I'm just good at recognizing facial expressions. For some reason, I understand that the people that I'm explaining stuff to, they may not get certain things. So it may not be the grammar rule itself. It can be something simple, but the way you deliver the message, the way you maybe your posture, the way you speak, and lots of other factors involved in this. And once you realize that your message isn't clear to them, try to rephrase it or try to use another approach. Maybe start using other language. For example, I teach English only within the Russian category of students. And I only teach English to those who study at Russian school. Yeah. But I understand that the guys are 14, 15, they may not be as great in Russian as I might be in terms of certain phrase and wording. And I try not to use those technical words and either avoid them or rephrase them with Uzbek versions. Anything that helps to make things clear. Yeah, I do use English sometimes, but I don't fully. I'm not a big believer in delivering lessons in full English unless they are B2 and above. That's my philosophy. I know a lot of instructors do speak only in English. They've got this rule, English only, in their classes.
You're looking at him right now. You're looking at one of those.
Yes, I guess that. I
Yeah.
sense that. You could be one of those. And the reasoning behind that, let me explain that. The reasoning behind that approach or philosophy is that if the student is elementary or pre-intermediate,
Yeah, there's no point.
there's absolutely no point
Yeah.
using English besides saying, hello guys, what's up? How you doing today? Because I can't imagine myself or the students understanding not only the grammar rule itself, but the way I speak and deliver them, the topic in English. So I would add weight and a little extra difficulty to the lesson itself just by speaking English.
And probably kill students' enthusiasm for learning as well.
And that makes them less interactive. And I'm a big believer in interacting with students. I pause once in a while between my talks, and so that students are involved, because they lose concentration after like 5 minutes.
Right.
So you have to keep them
Engaged.
focused and engaged.
Right.
So I pause, ask them questions, engage them by giving simple tasks like, give me one example of this and that, and they start thinking, okay, what is it? And that really helps. But if you do that in English, they would be hesitant to because of their own. They would be conscious of their linguistic skills, and they wouldn't interact with you, and that would just be a boring lesson.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with the point you're making here. Your choice of language in the class should most of the time depends on your students' level, right? The lower the level they are, it's preferable for you to speak in their native language until they get to a point where they can hold a conversation with you and grasp the points you're making in English. Yeah, I totally understand that, right? But it's at the same time important for teachers to keep in mind that not all students are capable, right? And they might feel excluded, right? If the teacher always speaks English. And I kind of feel some of my students feel that way. If you guys do feel that way in my class, please let me know in the comment section, okay? I promise I'm going to read all the comments there.
That's the time to confess.
Yeah.
Well, let's make our confessions.
Yeah, yeah. And you can use a fake account, so no one's going to know.
I knew it.
Yeah.
Okay,
just go and use a fake account, guys. Or you just come and tell you can tell it to my face. But I never teach a class in English to a student who, unless I'm confident, I'm sure they understand what I'm saying, right? I can tell
in that case, of course,
I can tell when a student is literally not capable of understanding English, and when they are capable of grasping your points, but too lazy to speak English because you just have to push yourself. You have to try to think of synonyms.
Yeah,
you
these
have
are
to try
two
to,
different things.
construct sentences.
Understand.
I'm just trying to stand up for those teachers out there who always speak English. Yeah.
Myself included, right?
Yeah, myself included. So, right. And so we talked about teaching a lot before we finish this section off. Can you tell us what you think are some qualities of an excellent teacher?
Qualities of a teacher.
Yeah, excellent teacher, like a perfect teacher. So how would you define a great teacher? Have you ever had great teachers in the past?
And so I would point out one thing, and if I have some more ideas, I will just keep adding. So the first thing that came to my mind is working within the interests of the student, not yours or the company. And that is perfectly reflected in the way some teachers assign groups. Like, for example, you've got 15 students in one group, which is like, let's say, elementary. And a guy approaches you and he wants to join the classes, and he's at elementary. He has to be at elementary, otherwise it's either too easy or too hard. But for some reason you can't put him in the elementary group because either there are no slots or the time isn't appropriate, and you decide to try him in the pre-intermediate, where he clearly struggles. And he doesn't know that. You do. The teacher does. The teacher clearly does understand that, okay, this might backfire. And it often does. And the student either ends up losing interest altogether and decides to quit English because of the teacher, or doesn't understand the problem and just keeps coming and not learning. And it can be a huge problem quite a lot of times. Yeah, of course, there are some talented and quite gifted students who can catch up with the rest of the group, but that's a rare occurrence, so you shouldn't be doing that way too often unless you're sure. Yeah, that's one thing that I would point out. I don't think this question has ever been raised because that would go against our interests. And so this might be a little controversial. But yeah. The other thing about, the other good thing about teachers, IELTS teachers in particular. Are we talking about IELTS teachers or teachers in general?
I guess we can do it like teachers in general.
So about teaching, I think it might sound cliche, but understanding your stuff, the stuff that you're teaching, is, I think this is undeniable. Like, you can't expect a teacher to be at a decent level if he doesn't get the qualification. And I don't mean degree, by the way, because I don't have the degree, teaching degree.
Yeah, neither do I.
Yeah, so so it's not about the degree or diploma itself, but about certain practices that you've gone through over the years, and as an evidence that you can teach stuff, which is even not an IELTS isn't that thing as a qualification, by the way, and that might again sound controversial, but IELTS certificate itself, in and of itself, isn't this qualification.
Yeah, it does not qualify you for teaching.
Yeah,
I agree.
So in my case, in my defense, it would be just my experience. Like, I've got no certificates when it comes to teaching. I haven't done CELTA, but I'm planning to. But yeah, the years of experience that I have behind my back is the solid evidence, which may not be compelling if you're just starting. Yeah, I mean, if you're just starting, the only thing you can rely on is your IELTS certificate.
Like you did back then, right?
Yeah.
And it worked out just fine. Worked out great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah. That would be it. Yeah.
How about students? What do you expect from an excellent student? What would you expect from
excellent student?
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to talk about one thing when it comes to students, and it might again be controversial. Like, I'm raising some controversial issues here. I think success in IELTS, or any other field for that matter, has a lot to do with your this is nature versus nurture thing, with your genes and IQ in particular. I'm not sure if you've witnessed that, or maybe you will start witnessing once I'm gone. I can see that some of the students are just not meant for that. They're hard workers. They do put in a lot of work, but they just can't seem to understand some of the nuances. Like, they do understand the journal stuff, but once they're like at 7.5, 8, there's some sort of like ceiling above which they can't seem to go through. And that, in my humble opinion, has a lot to do with their background, with their IQ in particular. And with that said, a lot of my talented students and by talent I mean just high IQ, got their high scores. For example, one of my students got 7 in the first year of his preparation, though he didn't do much homework. Mm-hmm. He would often be either absent in my classes or late. And by late, I mean 30 minutes, 40 minutes, because he had math lessons. So for him, IELTS wasn't even a priority. He was a good student in terms of like, he would do the stuff if you tell him to, he would listen to, he would be active in the class. Mm-hmm. But once he's out, like IELTS means nothing to him. He would not maybe constantly, but quite often miss the homework or do it incompletely. And I was expecting that this whole thing, this whole neglect would heavily and profoundly affect his score, I mean, in a negative way, but it didn't. He ended up getting 7 overall, and I think purely out of talent, some sort of talent, yeah.
So
because he wasn't a hard worker. He wasn't the definition of hard-working person, yeah.
So you do subscribe to this idea that talent makes a big difference.
It does.
It does.
I mean, I didn't make it up. I mean, it's nature. Like, we can't help it. I mean, you do need to work hard if you want to get something in life. Mm-hmm. That's no doubt. And I don't want to discredit anyone who may not be gifted, but still works hard. I mean, just keep trying, because I never considered myself to be talented, by the way. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of talent, I've never considered myself to be a talented student, because when I was starting my journey in the IELTS, I started with like complete IELTS 4 to 5 books. And at that time, I started my first mock tests. And out of 40, I used to get, it wasn't a one-time thing, I used to get 13, 12, sometimes 11 out of 40, both in listening and reading. So I wasn't at all talented. While some of my friends used to get 20 and above. And I, at that time, I slightly envied them. I used to get emotional about my score. I was quite worried about the lack of progress I had at that time. And I knew that, okay, if I'm not talented, I would have to just work hard, outperform. Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you're either talented and still work hard, or you are not, and you just overcompensate that lack of talent with just pure work, with sheer volume of effort.
Yeah, absolutely. You make up for lack of talent with lots of hard work. Yeah, and clearly it's worked out. Yeah. Here's an interesting story. I remember when I was in school, like I was taught French. I didn't go to a school where where I learned English.
Okay, that's
but then my parents transferred me to another school where English was one of the major subjects. Like it was a school that specialized in English and math, right? So when I went there, all kids there, I went there when I was in 8th grade. All the kids were there, super smart, and some even could write IELTS essays. I had zero concept was what IELTS was back then, right? And as a guy who had been learning French and could speak zero English, right? I struggled a lot. It was a rough experience, and some of the guys there actually, they end up getting, I guess, 7.5, right? In their first attempt, and I caught up with them
years later.
Yeah. And I'm not saying it to toot my own horns. I'm just saying that because yes, you can outwork someone talented. You can outwork. You just have to put in crazy amounts of work, crazy numbers of works. more work, right? And any other qualities of an excellent student you can think of?
Yes, other qualities. Yes, I guess being mindful is another quality. Could that be a quality or something you can just do or practice? So being mindful of the practices or methods that you implement in your studies. Like, for example, some of my students struggle with not, like, for example, I give them the task to read the passage before they do the questions, because that's the only way they can improve their reading comprehension. Otherwise, they would just read the extracts or the sentences they particularly need, rather than reading the whole passage. And they don't really understand why they do that. Some of them don't. And I start explaining that it's not only about the questions, for which you may not need the whole passage, but only parts of it. But you still need to read the passage. Not for now, maybe not for this purpose, for this task in particular, but in general. Like, they can't see the big picture. Yeah, I think that's the right way to phrase it. So they don't or can't see the big picture. So they can't see themselves in a long term, like in 2 years, in 1 year, in 3 years. Yeah, and they should be mindful of the things they do in the class, within the class, and out of it. Yeah, both in terms of homework and other stuff. And even if they watch some of the like movies on YouTube, they say that they watch a lot of YouTube videos and watch movies. But again, I can tell that they weren't being mindful while they were watching the stuff. And because they end up not understanding or not learning anything. Like, if you're doing certain tasks just for the sake of the task, without paying attention to other little details, you're not going to learn much. The same with reading. I can give you another example. If I analyze reading passages with my students, I always pause before I finish the passage or the paragraph. Like, for example, I read a few sentences out loud, and I stop if I see something interesting. For example, the other day I saw the phrase, this overlooks the perspective of those, and that was the counter argument. And I stopped there. We were analyzing the reading, and I stopped in order to point out the phrase that you may use for writing. And although it wasn't the writing lesson, but I did stop because I was mindful. Or I may just stop because not because the language aspect, but because the idea is interesting. I may just pause and say, wow, this sounds great. Yeah, this could be a big thing, or something like that. So it's not only about reading and doing the questions and that's it. Yeah, it's varied.
And have you always been like that, or was there a point in your life when you made that, switch from being not mindful to being mindful?
I can't say for sure, but I don't think I've always been like that. This habit may have been developed over the years, but not intentionally. Just happened.
So when did you start paying attention to things?
Once I started learning various stuff, like, for example, before I knew or understood the band descriptors for writing, I wasn't really paying attention to cohesion and coherence in reading passages. You know what I'm saying? So there's this cohesion coherence thing that is responsible for paragraphing, for using cohesive devices, however, nevertheless, and stuff like that. and other referencing tools. And I didn't know back then, when I didn't know about those aspects, I wasn't really paying attention to them because I didn't know about them. I didn't know about the importance of those things. And once I started learning here and there, a bit here, a bit there, I started paying attention to them, to these things, while doing something that is completely unrelated to those type of things. Yeah. Even when I'm watching some YouTube videos about, let's say, sport, I, out of habit, like instinct, I start recognizing patterns from speaking, from writing samples. It's just become some sort of a built-in mechanism, sort of say. So I may be doing something completely unrelated to IELTS and still think about IELTS.
What you're saying reminds me of a video by Tony Robinson. Like, you know this guy, Tony Robinson? He gives a lot. I
do, but I don't watch his videos.
Yeah. He talks about pattern recognition. Like, he says this is one of the secrets to success in general. Like, humans started building cities, right, and coming up with all these inventions. Once they started recognizing patterns, it all started with our ancestors long time ago, recognizing patterns in weather. So when they realized in winter it gets cold, in summer it gets hot, right? They could kind of predict, and they would prepare food.
So in they summer, can make a cause and effect conclusions.
Exactly. This so pattern recognition. So it comes with mindfulness. It comes with paying attention.
Yeah, that was the thing I was pointing out to.
Yeah. I got instantly reminded of that video I saw of him talk about pattern recognition. Yeah. Every podcast has been on, he's talking about just that. Yeah. All right. So I guess we can finally wrap up the part about education. Now I want to talk a little about your hobbies outside teaching.
Okay.
Right? Yes, you did say at the beginning of the podcast today that you're not quite active on social media. Do you have any plans for your social media page? What ideas? Are you gonna...
I guess now I kind of have to. I mean,
because I'm sure people want to hear more from you, not just this podcast. They want to see your work. They want to see maybe you making videos, have your own podcast.
I might as well do that. I was actually considering doing some sort of work, not only offline, which is quite what I'm quite used to, but also on the internet, some online work, like side hustle, and bring more people into the industry, so popularize the industry even more. I know it's already quite popular, but
the market is very saturated right now. It's very saturated, but still there is some space.
I'm pretty sure that there's lots of more people who would benefit from learning English or IELTS for that matter.
Yeah, there's never going to be a shortage of people wanting to learn English.
So I'm planning to boost my and work on my channel, on my online work, and do something out there.
Right. Okay. So what's the reason for not, being active, particularly active on social media? Is that because you don't like being on social media? You don't like being
No, it's not
on
about
camera?
That. I'm quite extroverted and open and easygoing, I guess. But I think the biggest barrier, the biggest obstacle for me to start was that the fact that starting in and of itself is just way too hard. Like when you just start your channel, you've got 15, 20 subscribers. There isn't much energy you can derive from, because you don't get a lot of feedback, a lot of response, so to say. And there's not much motivation and energy to do any work. Like you do start with some enthusiasm at the beginning. You do it for a week or a month, but then you end up quitting it or just pausing it, like I did. I did pause my channel, and I wasn't really active in my channel for quite a long time, and right until the recent recent event.
And how many subs you got as of now?
As of now, it's probably around 3.5K.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. You heard it. So now we're going to help Mr. Laziz to get this number up to 50K.
Yeah, really
okay. And we're going to need your help with that. Okay. So if you're watching this podcast right now, go and check the description box below. We're going to leave Mr. Laziz's channel link there. And I want you to go and subscribe. Okay. Subscribe. Otherwise, you're not getting a cookie.
That would be great. Thanks. Yeah.
All right.
So, any other hobbies?
Yeah. That actually brings me to my next question. What are some activities, hobbies you find yourself doing outside teaching?
All right. So, well, I teach a lot, and you probably understand the nuances. And I don't get enough free time, and especially right after now that I'm married, you get to have even less free time. I'm not sure what's your marital status and if you understand me.
Luckily I'm still bachelor. Oh yeah.
So you don't really get a lot of free time, but I try my best to make the most out of my days off, and my Sunday is my only day off. And it's not about work ethic or like that I'm too tired to work or too lazy to work. It's not about that. I don't think I have any issues with my work ethic because I try to give it all. But I understand the value of and the power behind balancing work and life. It's just undeniable. You can't really keep working until you fall down or die, for that matter. I mean, there has to be some limit, a natural limit, or someone should let you know that, okay, you've done a great job, now take some rest, have some rest, do something else. So yeah, when it comes to hobbies, I do play chess, but not as often as I used to. I'm a huge chess enthusiast, and I got to the point of I hit the 2,000 barrier. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it.
Not really. All right, can you explain it to me and our audience in IELTS?
I will explain it in statistical terms.
Okay, all right.
I was in 90th percentile of the chess scale. So I was in the 90th percentile, and I had the rating of 2,000 out of the highest at this point, 3,000. If I'm not mistaken, it's 3,300, somewhere around that, which is where Magnus Carlsen, Hikaru Nakamura, and big names are at. And I was at 2,000, which is quite decent for the person who wasn't taught and wasn't competitive. I didn't do competitive. I didn't play chess competitively. Yeah. Outside chess, I guess I do watch UFC. By the way, I've
UFC. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. Yes. Let's talk.
I wasn't really sure about bringing that UFC thing up until I saw the moment right at the end of your podcast with Alicia, where you guys talked about having the fight.
Oh, it's happening. It's happening.
Is this still on? Like
it is. It wasn't a marketing, hook or anything. We're doing it for sure. Okay, it was not us just ranting.
Well, then,
we'll do it.
In that case,
for sure.
Save some tickets for me.
We will, and we're gonna broadcast this live on YouTube on Astra Muse. Okay, right here on this channel.
By the way, what are you guys weight classes? Like, I'm pretty sure that Alicia is going to have a lot of advantage.
Oh yeah, he's way heavier.
How much do you weigh?
170 pounds. Sorry, 140 pounds.
What is it in kilograms?
That's
70 something?
65.
65?
Yeah, 65.
Oh,
right under 20.
Oh,
70 kilograms.
That gives me an idea to maybe after your bout with Alicia, to have it with me, maybe.
Oh, sure,
because I'm probably more suited to your weight class, because like I'm lightweight. So is it like I don't know.
I can move up classes, no problem. Like, I'm just
or I can cut. Yeah, that's the problem.
Sure. But I guess I think we should make it a thing, like UFC
like
in the IELTS industry.
67, and I'm incredibly close to your weight class, so that could be a real thing. Yeah. By the way, I do have a background in boxing.
You do.
So I should warn you.
All right, I don't stand a chance. Okay, against this guy.
Yeah, but
he's gonna knock me out for sure.
Quite fascinated by the recent, to me, which is recent to me, a jiu-jitsu thing. Like I wasn't completely aware of this thing existed before I was introduced to UFC. And I also, by the way, play a lot of UFC on PlayStation. Yeah.
You do. Who's your favorite UFC fighter?
UFC fighter in the game or in real life?
In real life. Yeah.
So in real life, it has to be Max Holloway. Like, I mean, come on, you have to accept it.
And he's gonna be fighting Connor this summer?
No, Max Holloway is the one who did fight Chandler and finished him right before they had the ring, right at the end of the 5th round. So he was, and the reason behind that is, like, if I pick favorites, I always have reasons why. It's not like, okay, I like this, that's going to be my favorite. No, I always happen to have some reasoning behind that. So the reasoning when it comes to Max Holloway would be the fact that he was winning all 5 rounds by points. He was clearly winning. He was dominating the fight, and he still went on. He still decided to make a fist fight, like a brawl thing, which is not a very sensible thing to do if you're having the advantage, because you risk getting hit by a lucky punch and just end up losing everything, and which is what he did, but still got the knockout. Which is something that a lot of, like, probably 99% of not just fighters but people in general, even high performing people in general, wouldn't have enough courage to go for.
Oh yeah. He could have just, stuck around there and won the fight, but he went ahead and started.
Went for it.
Yeah. That's very bold.
That makes him different. What sets him apart from other fighters. He may not be number one. Okay, that doesn't matter. For me, it doesn't matter. So that was a thing that stood him apart. I know there are a lot of other better fighters in terms of boxing, jiu-jitsu, whatnot. But that is something that was the thing that stood him apart. Up until then, I was rooting for Volkanovski. He was quite a good fighter.
But he's kind of old now. He's 35.
He's old, yeah.
He's 35, 40.
So I don't think I would be rooting for him anymore.
What's one UFC match you're looking forward to? You'd love to watch?
In the upcoming UFC sessions, or what do you call them? Matches. So if I'm not mistaken, in 303, there will be Conor McGregor, or 302. So that's the biggest fight I'm looking forward to. I mean,
so he's gonna be fighting Max Holloway or Chandler? Chandler is gonna be. Chandler knocked out Justin Gaethje. Did you see that fight?
Yeah, that's the fight I was talking about the whole time.
No, that was not Chandler versus Max Holloway. That was actually Chandler versus Justin Gaethje. I don't think that was Max Holloway.
Okay, so
that
can
was,
you repeat the question?
The question is one fight you are looking forward to, and he said that's Conor versus Chandler, right? And yes. Chandler is the guy who knocked out Gaethje.
Oh yes, he did.
That's the fight.
Yes.
So
It was a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
no, it was quite recently. And the fight, I guess you're mistaking Max Holloway for Chandler. Like those are two different fighters.
I'm pretty sure I'm not. Look, so in April, it was in April.
Oh yeah.
It was right after the Ramadan. Are we talking about the same?
Yeah.
Fight?
Same fight. Same fight.
It was UFC 300, the biggest event so far, and one of the main events was Ilya Topuria. Was it Ilya Topuria? Yeah, Ilya Topuria. No,
I'll look it up real quick just to get the facts straight.
Yeah. So it was definitely Max Holloway versus Gagey, Justin Gagey, and there was also.
My bad.
Yeah.
It is Max Holloway. Not. It is Max Holloway.
And there was also Tsarukian versus Oliveira. And by the way, I was rooting for Tsarukian because I saw a lot of potential in this guy. He's quite capable of things. Yeah, and the fight, the fight that I'm looking forward to is definitely Conor McGregor because he's been passive for the past several years, and he's finally here, and he's done a lot of work for the industry, and you can't deny that. He may be a jerk sometimes, but he did a lot of. He should be credited for his input.
Yeah, for sure. Like this whole UFC industry was
for
the most part built by
him for,
by him. He's done a lot for UFC. He's helped that a lot. So you said you did boxing in the past, right? So why'd you quit boxing?
What was the question?
Why'd you quit boxing, or you still box?
Yeah, it's a funny story about boxing. So I started doing boxing when I was in my 5th grade. It was either 5th grade or 4th grade, somewhere around that. And I did it for almost 5 years. And I guess I wasn't really successful. Yeah, I was a terrible boxer. That was a very compelling reason for me to quit. And I started focusing on my studies right after I quit boxing. And I do not regret it, not a single day, because the timing was perfect. Because I'm not sure where I would be now if I had quit the sport earlier or later. I might have ended up doing something completely different from teaching.
Yeah. So do you want to get back to boxing one day?
Probably not. Yeah, because I can't afford that. I mean, in terms of first of all, image and appearance, like you can't really show up in the public and in terms in front of your students after you got beat up.
I mean, things happen.
Things happen, right? Yeah. But no, I don't want to do it. I don't want it to happen on a regular basis. I guess that's the right way to say this. Yeah. You may still get beat up by some random dudes on the streets once in a while, but doing it as a hobby would either require you to do it carefully without engaging in sparring, but that would lose the whole point.
Yeah.
Or just giving it all and deal with the consequences.
So it's not worth it unless you want to become a pro, right?
Yeah, it's not. But I do hit the gym once every week.
Oh, you do?
Once a week, yeah. So that's the compensation for the lack of sport that I have in my life.
So what do you do at the gym? What's your training routine like?
Lift weights, lift spirits, as Diorvik would put it. Yeah, lift weights. I don't do cardio. I hate cardio. Although I do play football, but my stamina is very weak. My stamina has always been my weakest side, even back when I was doing boxing. Like I would lose fights, although I would be winning at some point. I would just end up losing it because I would run out of energy by the end of the fight or by the end of the round 3. And yeah, but I do lift weights. I may not look like I do, but I try my best at the gym. I so I do the basic stuff, standard practice. But I don't do any crazy stuff like deadlifting. I deliberately avoid deadlifting because I don't want to ruin my career.
Uh,
Yeah.
you're literally looking at someone who hurt himself badly.
I know I have the I
You
have
do-
the understanding. I do know a little bit of that history. I used to follow you back in the days, like it was a year ago or 2 years ago, actually, when you just started. When you just joined, was it a joining or was it back then? It was only Alicia posts, and then you joined at some point, and then I started following you as well. And back then you started deadlifting, and you had some partner or something. What was his name?
Trainer. You're talking
Trainer?
about my
Yeah,
trainer.
yeah.
My trainer.
Okay.
Yeah, he's so well. Basically, the story is I used to lift a lot, heavy, like
Ego
lifting.
lifting? Was it
Lifting.
elite
Yes,
ego
there's
lifting?
ego lifting.
Really?
Yeah, that's a term for it. So long story short, what happened is I hurt my back badly. I slipped a disc. It's called a herniated disc. So
Hernia, yeah.
a hernia. Yeah, that's what happened.
Is it curable?
Well, there's really no cure unless you cut your back open and remove the herniated part, right? And which is very dangerous because the hernia is the part hitting the nerve, so there's possible nerve damage. So that's not risk I want to take.
Oh.
Yeah, I'm at this point I don't feel any pain. I can work out pain free as long as I'm not lifting way too heavy, right? So I read somewhere on the internet it takes about 2 years for a complete recovery. But I'm not sure if there's such thing as complete recovery from hernia.
Oh.
Yeah, but overall, I don't feel that bad about this injury.
So you didn't do anything about the injury?
I did get few physiotherapy sessions,
Yeah.
but they didn't help at all. So this pain I used to have, thankfully, thanks to God, it's completely gone. I don't feel that pain anymore. It's also thanks to my trainer who got me on this rehab regime, like exercise I've been doing with him. So that helped me a lot. And yeah, so don't deadlift. You can deadlift, but make sure you got your belt on and you got someone watching your back, professional trainer preferably, and don't ego deadlift either. That's just a recipe for disaster and terrible life. So you don't want to be doing that. Yeah, but deadlift is never off the table for me. I want to actually go back to deadlifting again.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah. My trainer tells me I'm going to be able to lift. I just have to be patient with the recovery, right? And not rush things this time. But exercise is good for your overall health. I think if it were not for exercise, I wouldn't be. I talked about this podcast a few times before. Mental clarity I have and the fact that I can stay productive during the days is because of my training regimen. So these two things kind of go hand in hand, right? If my fitness life is out of balance, chances are I'm doing a terrible job at work, right? So I always make sure.
Why do you think so?
Exercise
Like, how do you
is good for your cognitive.
connect and correlate these two
Two
areas?
things. Just when you work out, you feel a lot better. Like you said, lift weights, lift spirits, right? When you feel great, you feel like doing things. When you feel shitty, you don't feel like doing anything. So yeah, as someone who does a lot of mental work, you sometimes have to balance that with a little bit of physical work. And also physical exercise humbles you. It reminds you of your limits, right? Because sometimes when we do a lot of mental work, we think we're smarter than we actually are, right? But when you lift heavy weights or just work out, you see what your limits are, that you're human. So I like that element. I like the fact that it makes me modest, teaches me to be humble, not to get ahead of myself.
That's a really good perspective to look at from. Yeah, actually, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I didn't actually realize that myself. I got it from one of the bodybuilders, and he talked about, his life on and off the gym. So he made the point that when you lift heavy weights, when you're under a huge load, you realize that you're not that.
Was it a C-bump?
Probably. That was a long time ago.
Oh.
But anyway, yeah, lifting is great as long as you don't push yourself past your limits and not ego lift. Right. Okay. Do you listen to podcasts?
Not as much as I used to. Like back in the days, I used to listen and watch a lot of Joe Rogan. Partly because I needed that for my listening skills and speaking skills, and but now not as often as I wish I could. So some of my favorite podcasts would be again Joe Rogan. Do you watch Joe Rogan?
Oh yeah, yes, absolutely. Joe Rogan. Yeah. He's the founding father of podcasting.
What is something that you learned from Joe Rogan and you started implementing?
It's consistency for sure. If you go and check his YouTube page, you see he's putting out podcasts every 3 days. I can totally be doing that right now, but it's simply not, I think, physically possible for me while I'm doing all these other things, running the school and teaching class. Like this, for example, this podcast, it kind of feels heavy to me right now because of the window I had between this podcast and my previous podcast. So preferably I want it to be like at least 7 days a week's time for me to kind of recover and recharge and be prepared for my next podcast. Here's something I'm going to disclose. I'm going to be having 4 podcasts this week. Oh, it's the first one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
In a week.
Yeah.
Span of week.
Yeah. This week alone, I'm going to be having 4 podcasts.
And this is the first one.
This is the first one. So I got 3 more coming up.
So is it 3 more until Sunday?
It's actually I'm going to be having the 4th on Monday. So that's
even less than a week.
Yeah, that's less than a week. 4 podcasts in less than a week. So, but it's not ideal, but it's such an opportunity that I don't want to miss. I honestly don't want to miss I badly wanted you to come on the podcast before you went on and everyone else's podcast. So I really appreciate you coming all the way from Navai to be here.
Yeah. You deserved it. You contacted me first.
Yeah. And I know today I'm not contributing to this podcast as much as I normally do. I'm not bringing much to the table, and I should give you some credit for doing all the talking. And I kind of feel like I'm just sitting here and listening because my mind right now is a little mental freeze. You can probably kind of tell that I'm slacking here today. Yeah, but this podcast has to happen, right?
Yeah.
And that's something I've learned. Consistency is really important. Even if it's, I tell myself, even if I do a terrible job on the podcast, I need to put it out anyway, right? Because I can't always be having a great podcast.
Yes, there's this famous quote by Joe Rogan that he says, the person who does the gym, let's say, goes to the gym because he has to, even if he feels like, it doesn't feel like doing it, will always outperform the one who only goes to the gym when he feels like doing it. That was the biggest quote for me.
Yeah, it is. It deeply resonates with me too, this quote. Yeah, what's your favorite episode of his?
Probably, I've watched. Probably among the favorite at least would be the one with the physicist. What was his name? Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's such a charming guy, and the way he delivers messages, the way he talks about stuff, and you can tell he's not a nerd. He's definitely not a nerd. He is a great communicator, and he knows a lot of stuff, and he always blows my mind. That's what he always tends to say. Like, okay, you want me to blow your mind? Here's the fact. Here's the funny fact. Here's the unusual fact. Yeah, and he's. I think he did not only once was it 2 times,
Mm-hmm.
3 times. He appeared on his podcast quite a few times.
Mm-hmm.
And Jordan Peterson is also a great guy to follow and
Mm-hmm.
to watch.
Yes. Yeah.
Although I may just end up falling asleep
Mm-hmm.
after the first hour,
Mm-hmm.
but he still gives a lot of nice information, useful information, and his talks are quite insightful.
I got 2 podcast recommendations for you. So if you said you like Joe Rogan, right? So one for intellectual enlightenment, like intellectual, growth, and the other one is for amusement, purely for amusement. So my all-time favorite podcast of Joe Rogan is the one with Naval Ravikant. I'm not sure if you watched this one. Naval Ravikant.
He's the IT guy.
Yeah, he's an angel investor. He's involved in a bunch of different things, and what's great about that podcast is it's just philosophy on everything, on life in general. I probably watched that podcast 50 times, if not more. Yeah, on repeat. I did. It kind of formed the basis of my philosophy on life, and so this is one. And the other podcast you have to watch is the one with Alex Jones. Watch the one. He's an American conspiracy theorist, and he talks about all things like aliens and humanoids and China doing experiments on people, DMT stuff.
Did he bring up the stuff about flat Earth theory?
Yes, and he also talks about the what was the guy who there was the scandal with politicians trafficking teenagers.
I haven't watched that one.
The name Absence Island. Yeah, you ever heard that theory? Absence Island. It's just basically an island where politicians have illegal intercourse with underage girls. Oh yeah. He's the one he's the guy behind that conspiracy theory, which has been recently proven. Oh yeah, which has been
proven.
Oh yeah.
Were there any culprits?
There was a massive scandal. There was a massive scandal. Politicians.
Yeah, I should definitely.
If you go on X, but formerly Twitter, like people talking a lot about politicians and CEOs and big name guys going to that island.
Recent thing?
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. So anyway, that's so amusing. That's so entertaining. His podcast, he talks a lot about aliens and the encounters he had. So much fun. And he's also a very lovable guy. His personality. Yeah,
I'll definitely give it a try.
but Alex Jones is a very polarizing figure. Like because he's said a bunch of bad stuff about school shooting in the past. Right? He called it a conspiracy theory, and which obviously pissed off the parents of kids who were killed in that shooting. Right. So he allegedly
he said that this whole shooting
are part of a conspiracy.
Planned.
Yeah,
by
exactly.
someone.
Exactly, and parents did not like it. Parents who lost their kids to these school shootings weren't happy about that. So he said a lot of controversial things in the past, and that's why he was taken off.
Do you know the
Twitter
Sorry
platform?
to interrupt you. I keep interrupting you. Do you know the conspiracy? Are you familiar with the conspiracy theory behind 9/11?
Yeah. I kind of do. It's orchestrated by the U.S. government to give them the reason to invade Iran, Iraq.
And the backup for that, the evidence for that, or the logic, was that some of the big names weren't in the building on that day.
Yeah.
And was it the owner or the CEO got the insurance covered a few days before the tragedy.
But let me tell you this: Americans don't like people calling 9/11 a conspiracy theory because it's a day in their history, tragic day in their history. I had this lady on the podcast, Masamni from the US, and she told me she was clearly infuriated by the fact that so many Uzbeks think that 9/11 is a conspiracy theory, and she said that it's very offensive to the American nation.
I mean,
Yeah.
why? Like, how would that? It's a theory.
It's a very
it
divisive
has the
topic.
right to be
Entertained. Yes.
Yeah,
Entertained. We should consider that possibility, but
I mean, we should be
it's-
open-minded, even if it's a tragedy. I mean, I understand it's a tragic thing to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Anyway, if you're into conspiracy stuff, we do watch
I
that
totally am.
episode with Alex Jones. And you're not going to regret that. And there are actually 3 of them, I guess. You should watch the one we should watch the one which is 5 hours long, 5-hour long podcast, and they talk about everything. And this is not something to be watched in one sitting. Okay, you need to take breaks every now and then to process, to kind of digest what they're saying, because it's a lot of heavy stuff. All right, so moving on, one final chapter of the podcast, I would like to talk philosophy, right?
all right.
What is your philosophy on life?
Philosophy on life.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
And can you sit a little closer to
I'm
the
the
mic?
kind of person who gives anything he does 100%, like all or nothing. I'm an all or nothing guy, and that is heavily and negatively affected my personal life. I have deliberately had to make a lot of sacrifice in order to get to where I am right now. And a lot of people don't really support my philosophy in this regard. Because, like, I mean, for the person who was born and raised in Uzbekistan in this environment, in this mentality, I have always been quite different, and that was the reason why I haven't been quite accepted by our society, not as much as I am right now. Like, I used to be quite probably not bullied, but at least not understood. Even back in my high school days, I used to think differently, and that would either piss off some of my peers or just make them confused.
This is actually something I heard from a guy I follow on social media, Alex Hermosi, and here's what he said. So, since you studied finance, you must be familiar with the concept of putting your eggs in different baskets.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
to
am.
diversify. Diversification, yes. Right? And here's what this guy says. He says, rather than putting your eggs in different baskets, put them all in one and protect that basket at all costs.
And that's a great philosophy.
Yeah. And then, so that, which is very much like what you said here.
Yeah.
Right? Go all in. Whatever you want to do in life, just go all in. Put all your eggs in one basket and protect that basket.
I guess that's what I did.
Yeah.
Now that I think of it. Yeah. So I'm quite familiar with the diversification thing. Yeah. And that's what I normally do. And that's my philosophy. What area of philosophy you want to particularly want to raise? Maybe.
Well, yeah.
Exactly
is it something you always had, this philosophy, or is it something you picked up at some point in your life? So where did you?
Well, I did pick up. I guess I did pick up that from my close friends, some of my close friends, because they were high achievers. They still are, and they were quite ambitious even back then. At some point in my life, it was, I guess, somewhere around my first year at the Lyceum. I was 15 or 16, and I didn't have the same mindset back then as I do now. But my friends did something similar, and they were quite hard workers and high achievers even back then. And that really helped me a lot. I mean, I can confidently say they are one of the main reasons, if not the main reason, behind my success, after my parents, I guess. But they were my source of motivation and competition, healthy competition that I had to have. I mean, you need to have some sort of competition and to keep comparing yourself in not in a negative way, but comparing yourself to some of the standards. So they were my standards.
Yeah.
So that so this is something that I picked up at some point in my life. Yeah, I haven't been like this. I haven't always been like this. Like back in my childhood, I was quite ambitious, but I wasn't hard worker. I wasn't a hard worker per se. Like I remember playing football and goofing around in the streets, doing completely complete nonsense with the wrong guys. Let's put it this way. Up until the license period, that changed that changed my life completely, like 180 degrees. Is it 100? Yeah. And I went from being non-achiever to a high achiever, sort of like, and that just came about only with the help of the environment. So my peers, some of my friends, again, I completely changed the circle I was in. I stopped contacting with those guys, and I still to this day don't even see them or don't even talk to them. We do sometimes bump into each other on the streets, but that's just a mere small talk, just ends with a mere small talk and nothing else. Yeah. I mean, that's something that I had to consciously make. That was my conscious decision, because otherwise I would still be in the same spot they are right now.
Yeah. I have almost the same story here.
Really?
Like, oh yeah. I used to be just like you, no different. I never took myself seriously until I found myself in the right environment, until I was put in an environment where I had to catch up with people. Right?
So what kind of environment was that?
So I went to a typical public school where kids didn't have high ambitions, and they all, thought of just getting a 9-to-5 job, just settling down. But then once I started going to high school, that's where I met guys who wanted to have their own business, who wanted to go abroad, who wanted to do traveling, who wanted to have all these nice things in life. And that's when I had to sort of change my belief system and my priorities about like what's important and what's not. And that's when I started cutting loose all those friends who had low ambitions and started being friends with guys who were serious about their future, wanted to do something with their lives. So yeah, and our stories really go to show that the environment is key to your success.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That perfectly resonates with me. Yeah.
Yeah. I said it before on the podcast. It's a quote like I picked up from someone. You are the product of 5 people you surround yourself with.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's
it
so true.
Works. Yeah.
And we two are 2 real life examples of that quote, of that idea. So if you're someone struggling to get ahead in life, you might look around and see if you're surrounded with the right people. And if you're not, it doesn't mean it's all lost. You can still kind of create that environment online, I guess, now, thanks to this internet thing. You couldn't do that probably 50 years ago, but now you can, which is what I also did. I started listening to podcasts. I started following people with open mindset, visionary, ambitious, with go-getter energy, right?
Yeah.
And guess what happened next? I ended up like one of them. So yeah,
it's inevitable.
It's like reprogramming your mind. It's reprogramming your system into success.
Yeah, you rewire your brain into a completely different landscape. Yeah.
It is important. So the next question I got for you is one last question for today is what's one piece of advice you would give your 16-year-old self or all those 16-year-olds out there?
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Is that already it? Like the time went by so quickly.
It's been 2+ hours.
Oh, I could talk for hours.
Yeah.
So advice to 16 years old
year olds out there.
And, I have to think about this. I want to make this sound worth there a while.
Yeah.
One piece of advice that just came to my mind is that your plans when you are 16, maybe 90% of your plans won't go according to your plan. And that is something that happened to me. I had completely different plans. I saw myself in a completely different environment, place, even the country, doing completely different things. And the whole idea of me becoming successful in finance and being working in other countries just was washed away with circumstances. And the circumstances that you are faced with, they are the ones that determine your path. So it's not about having a certain plan or having good plans per se or goals. It's about the system. It's about the basics that you have built and developed over the years so that you could be prepared for any circumstances. Even with the lockdown, that was a great example of what not to do and what to be prepared for. And if things don't go your way, you have to be able to adjust. You have to be flexible, to put it shortly, yeah. And that is something that I may have lacked, at least in the first half of the period of the COVID. Yeah, I was just wasting my time up until I decided to quit. Yeah. And I could have quit earlier. Yeah. Like, for example, a year earlier. And be a year more ahead. But yeah. So, wrapping up this piece of advice is that things don't always go according to your plan. So you have to be ready. You have to have plans, plan B, plan C, and just develop your foundation that would be applicable to any situation and any circumstance you're provided with. Yeah, and other thing would be about friendship, I guess. Back in the days, I used to care too much about friendships and relationships in general, while people in general don't really seem too invested in their relationships, at least at that age, while they are teenagers and adolescents. But I've always been like a giver. I've always been a giver. And never understood why people not really as enthusiastic about relationships and friendship as I was. So this has always been a mystery for me. But now, as I'm growing older, I do understand why. Because some of the friendships that you have at that age, especially at that age, they either last forever or end up they just disappear. And which is what often happens with most of the relationships that you have. So they either don't matter or they don't matter as much as you may think they do. That's the second big tip for all the 16-year-olds out there. But other than that, some simple advice, I guess, piece of advice, like you have to start creating your statue. You have to start crafting your figure, your portrait. I mean, in metaphorical way, your body, now in a literal way, and your mind, your values, somewhere around that age, 15, 16. Because at that time, you're either fully wasting your life completely and choosing the wrong path, and you most likely stay there, or you can get things together, make certain decisions, and change your life. Yeah, which is what happened to me. Like, if now that I think about this, if I hadn't made certain choices back then, when I was 16, when I was studying at Lysum, I wouldn't be here. Yeah. I can give examples. Like, for example, I was friends with a few guys who were not the type of guys who I am right now. So that's what I refer to as wrong people. And we would do things that wouldn't bring any benefits to our life, wouldn't make our lives any better. And at that time, I wasted a lot of money on unnecessary stuff, and I was focused on completely nonsensical things that didn't matter and wouldn't matter even today. But then all of a sudden, a few guys saw me, and by saw I mean they saw the potential, I guess. I know how to describe this. This just happened. And they kind of like invited me. It's not something that I want to point out the important thing, that the change that I made wasn't thanks to me. Like, oh, I have to change things. No, it was with the help of those guys who made me change. Like, who put certain ideas and thoughts in my mind that I kind of liked more, and then started changing. So I have to admit that I wasn't the one who really made the change, but those guys. Yeah, and both of which have achieved great success in their lives, and they're also the examples about the things that we've just talked about. So one of them is the co-founder of the language center that I work at, and the other guy is now in the USA. He's happily married and doing some work in IT, and and a few other guys too. Definitely, yeah. It's not like two people in particular. Like it was the environment, sort of like That's the probably three big. Was it three?
Yeah. That's a lot of great. That's a lot of great advice, and I hope you guys are taking notes right now. Okay, because these podcasts are here, and for you guys to hear this, so you don't make the mistakes we made, so you don't have to learn these lessons the hard way. The lessons we had to learn the hard way, right? So you go and do it right from the beginning, from the get-go. That's what this podcast is for, and I'm super appreciative for you to share your life story, your past, and all these useful lessons and insights with us today. That means a lot.
That you invited me, guys. I had a lot of fun. I could talk for hours. It's just bedtime, but I could definitely talk for hours. Like, I wonder now that if you had a few of your podcasts 5 hours long, I wonder when you guys started shooting. Like,
we start shooting the same time, 7.
Really?
And by the time we wrap up, it's 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock in the morning. Oh yeah, I can actually tell that that it was midnight, because I was barely keeping my eyes open. If you go and watch those podcasts, extra long podcasts. Yeah.
And so, did you guys plan that out to make it 5 hours long?
No. That was not. None of the stuff that happened here today is scripted. Everything is, as you can.
Yeah, that's what I like it.
Yeah, as you can attest, it was all improvised, all natural, all genuine. All right. If it's a good stuff, it's out there. If it's a bad stuff, it's out there. We're not filtering anything out here.
Authenticity.
Yes,
yeah.
exactly.
I'm a big believer in authenticity.
Yeah, yeah. Like today, we got a lot done, and it was so inspiring listening to your story, right? Hearing from you, and listening to your recount your exam experience. Would love to see you on the podcast a few more times in the future.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking like 5 minutes back. I was thinking, I wonder if this guy is going to invite me again.
For sure, for sure. I guess he's gonna call you first when you get your band 9.
Oh yeah.
This guy. Okay, we'll see. Sure. We'll see you again.
It might happen soon. It might happen soon. I did apply for
keeping fingers crossed. Yeah. That'll happen soon for sure. So, do you have any final remarks you'd like to make before we end this shoot?
There were lots of things I wanted to talk about, but I guess again, since we're here because of the writing thing in particular, I would also mention one thing that I think I forgot to mention. I may have slightly touched the grounds, but I'm gonna make it clear. And when it comes to ChatGPT and preparation process, I didn't mention the fact that I have actually successfully guessed the and predicted the questions that I got. I took the exam. I've taken the exam 8 times at this point, and out of those 8 times, I've successfully guessed. I don't like the word guessed and predicted, but I have to use those. 3 of them. I'm not sure how big of a number that is. That has to be quite high. I mean, the success rate of your guesses shouldn't be that high. And 3 out of 8, that's a lot. That's almost like half your essay questions. So the thing that I did would be similar with the famous quotes of Louis Pasteur. I'm pretty sure you know this. It says, the chance favors the prepared mind. Yeah. So that basically means you prepare for your exam questions that much, so much that there's no choice other than getting what you prepared for. And getting what you're prepared for, the exact question that you know the answer to, is a huge advantage. In my case, that was the key advantage. If I had other type of questions, I may not have had the same success. So I would attribute the success to that particular fortune. But I wouldn't want to call this luck, because I think I made my own luck by just heavily preparing for it. Like, I've looked through hundreds of questions and topics, some common topics. I looked through forums and platforms and websites, and I just do my research. So what would I say to this argument? What would I say to this? What would be the solution to this problem? And this work was the preparation and the key aspect of that success in particular. Yeah, so that's what I would, that would be my final and probably most important, for some reason most important, and final tip is to do lots of research. Like, if you are prepared, there is no way you would fail. I mean, you are so prepared that you can't fail. Yeah, there's probably a better term or quote for that case, but yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah. I've actually heard something similar on a few podcasts I listen to. You have to work so hard that it's impossible for you to fail. Yeah, failure is not exactly. It's something along these lines, right? But at the same time, you said something interesting when I asked you about your philosophy. You said, when you get the basics right, circumstances don't matter.
Yeah.
You said that. So when you get the basics right, circumstances don't matter. So if you got the basics right in writing, it doesn't matter what topic or question you get. Don't you agree?
I do.
Yeah.
I do.
If you just get the base, if your grammar is generally good, if you just know English, and you're just well educated, you're well informed on different topics, in general, doesn't matter what kind of topic or question you get. even though I admit topic familiarity makes a difference to some extent, agree. I don't want students to, you know, to count on that.
I mean, it only matters, I guess, after some level, after some point. Like once you cross the 8+ ceiling, I think the systems are, or the basics are more or less the same, I guess.
Yeah.
Like I don't think that a certain niner with writing 8.5 or 8 is just better at certain things per se. So it's about, I guess, preparation and question familiarity at some point.
Yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure that you could do the 9 if you had the question or if you prepared for the question that you really wanted to get, and you would end up getting that. So that would be just a matter of the question and circumstance again,
right?
I guess. But at that level, before like 8 or 8.5, it's about basics. Yeah. I mean, if you've got the systems, structured system, and if you've got the basics right, you really can't fail, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. All right, Mr. Laziz.
Yeah.
Today's episode was great. It was great. It was fantastic to say the least. And I'm so honored to be talking to you today. And
me too.
Yeah,
me too,
I hope to be. I hope.
Same feelings.
I hope to see you on the podcast a few more times again in the future. And if you guys like today's content episode, please let us know in the comment section and leave us some thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to this channel. All right, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.